want to thank everybody for showing up today. I mean, this is an historic day not only for Arizona, but for our country and for the Congressional District that we're going to be electing the next Congressman, Vernon Parker. And I'll tell you, I'm excited. I want to introduce him and to say a few words about Vernon Parker. Thank you.
Thank you. But I met Vernon about 3 years ago, right, Vernon? I asked you to come from Washington. We have the only high school in the nation in a jail. I started that, called it Hard Knocks High. So when we were graduating some of the inmates, the juveniles, I asked Vernon to come and be a guest speaker. How you feel about our young people, education. I know you came up the tough way. People that come up the hard way and make something of yourself. So bless you for that. I'm in his corner 100%. And he will be the next congressman. So thank you, and I will highly recommend everybody get behind him. It's a tough race. I believe you got a few other people running, but that shouldn't bother you.
We'll just run them over.
Yeah, run them over. Well, make sure you do it legally.
This is indeed a pleasure, and I'm so happy to be here today. And I want to introduce my family, my lovely wife, Lisa, my daughter, Sonia, my mother-in-law all the way from Cape Town, South Africa, Yetta, my niece, Leanne, and the big fella, my son, Ian. So I just want to really, first of all, I want to say, Sal, you have a tremendous future in front of you. We will hear a lot from you in the years to come. You really embody Arizona politics, and your support means so much. And I'll tell you one thing about the sheriff. I'll never forget the day, the first time that I spoke at his school of hard knocks. I said, Sheriff, why don't you promote this? And he said, well, you know, no one wants to hear it. And when I walked into that jail, Lower Buckeye, and I saw those kids walk in their prison outfits with their cap and gown, and I saw them receive their GEDs. But for the first time in American history, this past year, 6 of them received actual high school diplomas. And when I looked at those kids and I said, many of you look like me. When I looked at those kids, I said, many of you, I could be you. Take advantage of what the sheriff has done for you. And he doesn't get the credit for that, but Sheriff, thank you for caring about those kids. And I think, you know, and in moments like today, when we talk about law enforcement and you hear about a police officer being slain. My brother's a deputy sheriff at LA County, and I just want to take a moment of silence for the poor family and the police officer that was slain today. And our prayers are with them. And I also want to thank Congressman Shattuck for his many years of service in the Congress. And I'll tell you, you know, over the last year we've had a riptide that has taken effect in America. And it has taken us away from our ideals and principles that once made us great. And every day that we don't swim against the tide, we are swept further and further away from our core beliefs. And today we are drowning in a sea of misplaced policies. We have the mistaken belief that government is our cure-all. But government is not our cure-all. Government is a placebo. But by not swimming against the tide, we are sinking further and further into debt. By not swimming against the tide, we are being engulfed with waves of government-sponsored programs, from corporate bailouts to a proposed faulty health care plan. Outside of law enforcement, protecting our borders and national security, there's very little that the government can do better than the private sector. And when it comes to socialized medicine, we should tell Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid that if their bill is good enough for the American people, then it should be good enough for all unions and should be good enough for them. And there's one provision of the bill that sort of frightens me, and that provision is that if you violate the coverage provision in this proposed health care bill, guess who enforces it? IRS agents. Now, if that doesn't shake you up, nothing will. Now, speaking of a level of comfort, we can no longer continue to print money like it is monopoly money. And we know we're in trouble when the great country of France tells us that we're spending too much. America had revenues of $2.3 trillion, and we spent $3.5 trillion, and we have $65 trillion in total liability. And these numbers, they just don't add up. And China holds $800 billion of our debt. And that, folks, is a security risk. And we must not let our guard down when it comes to national security. A weak America would have a devastating impact on this world. And we must not become lax when it comes to border security and illegal immigration. And when you hear those words, illegal immigration, the one word that just stops me in my track is illegal. We cannot pick and choose which laws we enforce. If it's illegal, we have to enforce the law. Now is the time for all Arizonans and all Americans to swim against the tide. Now is the time to bring this country back to the sound principles that once made this country great. Limited government, reduced governmental regulations, sound fiscal policies, and personal responsibility. And by electing me to Congress, I promise to help the people of Arizona and the American people swim back to shore and stand on the solid ground of freedom. I believe we can restore faith in America. I believe that our brightest days are in front of us. I have overcome many odds in my life, my entire life, and I believe that America can do the same. I was raised by a grandmother who could barely read. I was raised by a grandmother who could barely, she couldn't read, she could not do much on the educational front, but the one thing that she showed me was a lot of love. And I was raised in an environment that was drug-infested, gang-infested, and I overcame those odds. I supported myself all the way through Georgetown University. But there is one day that I'll never forget in my entire life, and that day was the day that I received a phone call from presidential personnel at the White House. And they said to me, the president would like for you to come and serve in his administration as a special assistant to the president. So after about 2 seconds hanging up the phone, filling out all the paperwork, I was there. I said, this is the place to be. But I'll never forget that day when I drove up to the West Wing. And those big iron gates, they just swung wide open. And I drove up in my little blue Honda. I was so cool. And I never forget the dogs, they sniffed the car, Secret Service, they walked around. And I said, only in America can someone come from my background and serve as a special assistant to a president. And those days, and I will take that same fight to Congress. But you know what? I've overcome the odds so much that I've been called two words that really stand out to me. The first word is an enigma, and the second word is a novelty. It was a novelty if this thing stops working. Huh? And I asked myself, I said, is a novelty someone who has a Georgetown law graduate? Is an enigma someone who served as a general counsel of a major federal department? Is a novelty someone who served as a small businessman? Is an enigma someone who was nominated by the president and unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate as an assistant secretary? And then I said, is a novelty someone who ran for the Paradise Valley Town Council and received the most votes in the history of the town, 67%? If that is an enigma, if that is a novelty, help send this enigma and novelty to Congress. And I'll tell you one thing that I don't have a famous last name, I don't have a trust account, but what I do have is the American dream. I will not be the party guy. I will not be the guy that the Republican Party stands behind and says, hey, you are our guy. I will not be the company man once I get there who will just do and say whatever he has to do to get the next promotion to the next best committee. But what I do have is a trust in you, and I do have the faith of the American people that the brightest days are in front of us. We will restore the faith in America, and we will do it one person at a time. And I ask you for your help, but I want you to do one thing as we close, just one final thing. Close your eyes for 1 second and just follow me. Just imagine this. Close your eyes. Imagine the day when we win the primary on August 24th. And August 25th when they're trying to figure out what to do. when Barack Obama jumps on the plane to come and campaign against me. May God bless you. May God bless this great state of Arizona. And may God bless this country. And we thank you so much. Without your support, we would not be